Good evening. I'm Leland Vittert. The Texas governor's race now centers on the immigration issue. We're going to tell you and show you why new polling shows Hispanics are turning to the GOP. Plus, what we can learn from this weekend's fire in New York that killed 17. And this lesson has nothing to do with smoke alarms. But first tonight, the skyrocketing cost to heat your home this winter and Democrats' plans in Congress to fix it. Freezing temperatures through the Mid-South and are now below zero. Numbers in the Northeast are getting even colder. That's combining with lower energy production to punish your wallet. Depending on how you heat your home, your costs are up between 30 and 50%. For propane, this winter is going to cost you more than $2,000. If the polar vortex returns, those numbers will only get worse. For those of you watching in Florida and throughout Tennessee and Georgia, enjoy the warmth. This story applies as much to you because of gas prices as it does to home heating costs. Democrats say it's all the oil companies' fault. 41 Democrats in a letter to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission demand that the agency, quote, ensure that households' energy bills are not driven up by manipulation, obfuscation, or other malfeasance. We invited a majority of the people on that list to come on the show tonight. None have taken us up on our offer. They argue high energy prices are because of collusion and price gouging rather than higher demand and President Biden's anti-fossil fuel policies. A Wall Street Journal op-ed writes, no climate warriors in frozen foxholes. Quote, President Biden, encouraged by the signers of this letter, has made clear that U.S. fossil fuel production must be phased out. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Penn East Pipeline were both canceled, even after beating opponents at the Supreme Court. Getting gas to Mr. Markey and Miss Warren, both senators in Massachusetts, is so difficult that sometimes it comes into Boston Harbor on a tanker from Russia, and they wonder why heating prices are high. As noted, we asked the letter writers to come on. That invitation is open, as it is to anybody who agrees with them. That said, we bring in Daniel Turner, founder of Power to the Future, who represents smaller energy producers, joining us from Alaska. Good to see you. Perhaps it's even colder there than it is here in Chicago. Daniel, do these 41 have a point that the energy companies are now living pretty high on the hog?
No. Look, this is a constant rebuttal now of this administration and of Democrats in power, that whenever something is a problem resulting from their policies, they blame collusion, they blame bad practices. They've talked about big meat. The big meat producers are making meat prices rise. They've talked about oil, and Biden sent a letter to the FTC demanding to investigate the oil industry. And so, yes, prices are high, and that is good for energy companies, but that's bad for Americans. And we want what is good for Americans. And the reason why prices are high is because, as you said in your intro, this administration has made supply dwindle tremendously in the last year. So they're responsible for what's happening.
Well, I understand that you want what's good for America, but everybody's got to make a profit. I mean, I think I'm looking at Chevron right now. They're up 30% year to date, or pardon me, in the past year. The American public is paying that. Are you saying that there are things the Biden administration could do and Democrats in Congress could do that they're not to lower energy prices?
Absolutely. Look, go back just a couple of years, 2019, when we were producing more oil and gas than we had historically. And the rhetoric then was that the Trump administration was in the pocket of big oil. Their profits weren't nearly what they are now. And yet the oil and gas industry was extremely happy. They were employing more people than ever before. They were sending record revenue to the Treasury. So how was big oil this problem 2 years ago when prices were considerably lower, 40 to 50% lower than they are now? So again, this is just all pure political posturing. And in the process, Americans are suffering.
So a big part of the political posturing, or the politics of it, for lack of a better term, are progressives, liberals, call them whatever you want, Democrats, on the issue of trying to transfer America's energy independence dependence from fossil fuel to green fuel, renewables, et cetera. Take a listen to a few of the more notable names talking about that.
There is a drought hitting virtually every country on Earth. Newsflash, climate change is real.
The fossil fuel industry and the future of humanity are fundamentally incompatible.
The United States' leadership recognizes there is global warming.
You all have continued to promote fossil fuels despite knowing that promoting them means promoting environmental racism.
The evidence is undeniable that climate change threatens our economy.
Okay, so you guys are public enemy number one. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But and I guess what I'm getting at, is there anything that the oil industry, and for that matter, if the Biden administration let the oil industry do right now, that would actually lower prices?
Yes, they could take away, for example, the moratorium on fracking on federal land. The Department of Interior could continue its lease sales of federal land, something they were ordered by a federal judge several months ago to do. And the Secretary Deb Haaland just ignored it and said, no, we're not going to continue. They could have lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico, right? So again, they've put in place so many policies that have made producing oil and gas hard. And the consequence of that has caught up to them. And here we are a year later, after a cumulative effect of these policies, supply is dwindled, demand is increasing, and that's just the laws of economics. And then they look around and they say, well, what's the problem?
Let's take the people who wrote that letter as that they are sincerely concerned about these rising costs. What I'm hearing from you is that it doesn't seem as though there's a way for them to have both things, right? The lower cost that they want, and at the same time move on, as all of them have talked about in their sound bites, from fossil fuels.
No, not exactly. And this is the frustrating part of dealing with this ideology, is that it is not based in science or in engineering or in pure just physics, right? The amount of fossil fuels we need to create wind power, solar panels, to transport those things, most of which are manufactured in China. You mentioned in your intro, we're sending tankers of natural gas from Russia into Boston Harbor. How is that good for the environment, right? How come Elizabeth Warren doesn't ever look at Boston Harbor and say, forget about the foreign policy. Why are we supplying our country with Russian natural gas when just a couple 100 miles away in Pennsylvania and Ohio, we have an almost endless supply, 300 years of supply? And the answer, so again, it's pure stupidity, Leland. It's pure stupidity.
The answer that you're giving is the reason that we're bringing it in from Boston is or from Russia is because we don't have these pipelines. It's interesting, in the people who wrote this letter have a point in terms of how badly these cost increases are hurting America. 19% of Americans could not pay an energy bill in full. 29% chose to pay energy over other household necessities, things like going out and grocery shopping. As I'm reading this and hearing what you're saying, it seems as though it's your belief that these 41 and other progressives are prioritizing being anti-fossil fuel as more important than helping their constituents heat their homes affordably.
Absolutely. And this is the result of government action. And that's very important to understand, because you can look at other sectors of the economy where deliberate government action have changed markets. What's happened to Amazon since the pandemic has started? Right there, look at Jeff Bezos's personal wealth. That's government action. Government action shut down small businesses, told people to buy online. Look at the pharmaceutical industry. What is happening to their profits as we are telling people, forcing them to buy their product? Well, in the same sense, government action has punished my industry, the oil and gas industry.
I've always known you to be both fair and honest, which is one of the reasons we enjoy having you on, even if it's about an issue that you're calling out another side on. You think about the things about drilling on federal lands and fracking on federal lands, the pipelines and the like. Is there any reasonable policy explanation for doing those things other than to be punitive against the oil industry?
No, it's purely punitive. This is about ending our fossil fuel industry in America. Something Biden said very clearly he wanted to do during his campaign. Now, not when the cameras were on.
Yeah,
right? These were things he said in
what's
private.
puzzling to me is these are smart people. You say whatever you want about this White House. They've got smart people. If their desire is to end the fossil fuel industry, they're driving prices up. The fossil fuel industry is making more money than ever. They don't seem to be doing a very good job at it.
Look at what we do. Look at the stupidity of this administration on so many policies. Look at what we're doing today on Nord Stream 2, the pipeline that Vladimir Putin is trying to build from Russia into Germany. This administration is on the hill.
I just want to get back to this very specific issue. If their stated desire, and we can go back to it if we have to, of trying to end the fossil fuel industry and make the fossil fuel industry sort of that it's so painful to do business, you go out of business. The exact opposite's happening. They're making it painful, so prices are going up, and the fossil fuel industry is getting richer than ever.
Yeah, well, again, this is the power of government and the danger of when people who shouldn't have this power wield it unnecessarily.
Let me turn this around. It's a fascinating intellectual exercise. I'm going to put you on the spot. I know I am. But if you were to design policies to make the fossil fuel industry actually go out of business, from the administration's standpoint, what would they do that would do that?
Well, again, my belief is that the industry will never go out of business because what they are trying to supplant it with, which is wind and solar and renewables, are all made from fossil fuels. And in fact, they need more fossil fuels than if we just burn those fossil fuels, at least in terms of electricity or gasoline for our cars. So if they say, let's get rid of gas, we'll buy electric vehicles. Well, what is your electric vehicle made from? It's made from oil and gas and coal, right? So we're never going to get rid of fossil fuels in the immediate future because everything in our consumer economy is made from, produced with, manufactured, or in the case of our food, pesticides, fertilizers are all byproducts of fossil fuels. That's why I love this industry and why I celebrate it and defend it.
And you are a phenomenal spokesperson and ambassador for it. We got to run, Daniel. It was always a good conversation. Thanks. I know you got an afternoon or an evening ahead of you in Alaska. Stay warm, and we'll see you back in the lower 48.
Thanks, Leland. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for making time. Parents of 340,000 Chicago public school students continue to struggle for childcare literally every day because they don't know whether the kids are going to school or not. You see, the teachers union refuses to go back to the classroom. The union says they want in-person learning delayed amid the rise in COVID cases and voted for a wildcat strike. Now they are playing defense.
We do not have the reassurances that we need to restart school.
Our schools are not a safe place for students and staff at the moment. At this point, we are asking for 1 week of remote learning with the additional safety measures of increased testing at schools.
Okay, but the teachers are largely on an island, a cold island, because it's quite cold here in Chicago. Parents hate remote learning. There is mounting evidence it causes massive problems for their children, including an increase in suicide attempts. And Democratic politicians who normally support the unions are taking the parents' side, including the very liberal mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
This is an unnecessary, illegal work stoppage that ignores the data and the science. Every other school system in the city of Chicago is open for in-person learning except for CPS.
We will not sit by and watch our children's mental, emotional, and physical health deteriorate behind a computer screen all day.
Jeff Schwab, senior attorney at the Liberty Justice Center, who filed a lawsuit on behalf of the parents against the teachers union. Jeff, do you think that if the mayor was really serious, she calls this an unnecessary illegal work stoppage, wouldn't she just fire all these teachers?
Well, what we've seen from the mayor and CPS over the last year and a half is they've allowed CTU to use these tactics, these illegal tactics of threatening and going on strike. And that's why we've had to file this lawsuit to prevent CTU from going on strike.
Well, they're on strike. You filed a lawsuit. It doesn't seem to have done much good.
Well, we have a hearing coming up on Wednesday, and if we're successful, we're hoping that that will end the strike.
Okay, so how does this work? A judge says this is an illegal strike. You must go back to work, and the teachers say, well, no. Then what?
Well, if you don't follow the injunction, then there are penalties. This is if the judge enters an order, that's a lawful order.
There's penalties right now, conceivably, against them, and why should they believe a judge if they're not going to, or listen to a judge? Why do you think they're going to listen to the judge if they're not going to listen to the mayor and to their own contract?
Well, right now the mayor and any other officials, CPS officials, aren't enforcing the law, and so that's up to us, and that's why we filed the lawsuit.
I know, but when you say enforce the law, what could they do that they're not doing?
What could CPS do? Well, they could have, over a year and a half ago, they could have filed an unfair
what
labor.
could they do? What could they do now that they're not doing?
Well, they should be the ones that are going to court and getting this injunction. This is an illegal strike. They should have done this last year when the union did the same thing when the CPS was trying to get kids back into hybrid learning. But they allowed them to use these tactics. They delayed hybrid learning for months, particularly for elementary school kids, and then they delayed it for high school kids
I
too.
feel like what you're saying though is you're not really taking the mayor at face value. You think she's sort of faux angry about the strike and isn't really putting the thumb screws to the teachers union like she says she is.
Well, that's the point of why we had to file the lawsuit, is because the mayor and CPS haven't done this.
I'm interested. This president of the CTU, we do not have the resources we need to restart school. They say they want to be in person. The union does. Do you believe that, or you think that they're just lazy and using COVID as an excuse to stay home?
Well, I don't know what they want, but I know what they've done. And I'll tell you what doesn't make sense is that if the schools were unsafe, why did they go back on Monday and Tuesday of last week and then call the strike on Wednesday? That doesn't seem to make any sense under reasoning that they're giving. And instead, they called in a strike that was illegal, and nobody's done anything about that except for this lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm fascinated also about this when you think about like the White House press secretary. There's this political component to it that in both the mayor and the president both say they think that kids should be back in school, but they, especially the White House, refuse to really go after the union. Conceivably, the White House president could have some pretty serious ramifications. Take a listen to the press secretary.
We have been very clear, publicly and privately, that we want to see schools open. We're in regular touch with them, both the mayor and the governor, and we'll continue to see how we can assist.
I still can't get over the idea that it would have been pretty easy to really condemn the union or to say that the White House, the Justice Department is going to file an amicus brief for something for you guys, or the city file an amicus brief for you guys, friend of the courts on your side of this, but it seems as though the parents are out on an island too. You're not getting any support.
No, but we're hopeful that we know that the law is on our side, and we're hopeful that when we get before a judge, the judge will see that the law clearly says that they can't go on strike because there's a contract that's not been terminated, and also the contract says they can't go on strike. So we think the law is very clearly on our side, and we're very hopeful that a judge will see that and enforce the law against CTU.
Yeah, well, you have to wonder if the teachers' union would be willing to listen to the judge, because they haven't listened to the president or the mayor. But I understand so many of your clients, the parents, Jeff, are really upset, understandably so. Really appreciate you being here with us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll follow what happens on Wednesday. Pay attention to that. A top American Olympic athlete is finally speaking out about China's terrible human rights record. We're going to see if the Chinese are going to pay attention. Plus, amid the White House messaging issues on COVID and inflation, President Biden heads to Georgia to push voting rights. Is this the issue that can give the White House a big win? George Will standing by for that. President Biden heads to Capitol Hill 6 weeks from now for the State of the Union speech, an event where presidents love to sell a few accomplishments, promise a couple of big achievements coming up. It's a chance to reset the messaging, which continues to plague this White House now a year in. This from the AP. Biden shied away from news conferences, interviews in year one. He has held fewer news conferences than any of his 5 immediate predecessors at the same point in their presidencies, and has participated in fewer media interviews than any of his recent predecessors. To be fair, the AP noted he met with the press informally more than 200 times, although the substance of those remarks varied. This chart tells the story. Mr. Obama and Trump held more than 100 press conferences and interviews. President Clinton and both Bushes held more than 50. Biden hasn't made himself available to the press virtually at all. Just 31 combined press conferences and interviews, which the AP suggests could reflect his low approval rating. Heading into the new year, The president needs a political win, badly, one that could rejuvenate his administration and boost Democrats in the midterm elections. For that, we bring in George Will. I say these following qualifications not necessarily in order of importance. Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist, author of American Happiness and Discontent, and brand new NewsNation senior contributor. Good to see you, sir. We appreciate it. Do you think I get journalists sort of overstating their importance. Do you think it's fair for the AP to equate President Biden's news conferences and interview appearances with his approval ratings?
No, I don't. Put yourself in the position of whoever's in charge of White House communications. Are you sure it's in your interest to put Mr. Biden out there? Now, Mr. Biden is not the most fluent president we've had compared to either Jack Kennedy, whose news conferences were destination television, or, say, Barack Obama. There are two problems.
Well, I guess Biden, in fairness, President Trump's was must-see TV too, right?
Well, that is true, because he was, by profession, a performer and an entertainer. Mr. Biden isn't. And when Mr. Biden finds that he gets tangled up in his syntax sometimes, people necessarily, not fairly, but necessarily say, well, that could have something to do with his age. Second, he has a way of having sort of verbal fender benders with regarding policy. Remember in a CNN town hall recently, he said that the United States has a commitment to come to the defense militarily of Taiwan. Now, I wish we did have such a commitment, but the fact is we don't. And he's had several times to walk back major policy proposals. So I'm not clear that it's in his interest or, frankly, in the nation's interest to have him out there improvising policy.
It does bring up an interesting point that he may be better off not being as seen. And I know, in listening to some of your previous speeches and read some of your previous books, it wasn't always this way. You think about presidents back during the teens and 20s before television, presidents were not seen that much.
That's right. They weren't seen at all until television came along. They were heard. Franklin Roosevelt changed the relationship of the citizen to the presidency and to the central government simply using radio. We marvel about the internet and before that with television. I think it's arguable that radio had a bigger effect in revolutionizing politics than either the internet or television. But until it came along with Franklin Roosevelt, who was a master of the medium of radio with a wonderful voice and a wonderful delivery, until then, presidents were necessarily technologically remote.
I think about coming back to this, the AP saying the reason his approval ratings are low is because he hasn't been out talking to folks as much. Then you look at problems the government should prioritize in 2022. Economy, 68%, COVID, 37%, immigration, 32%, other health care, 30%, politics, only 7%. If in a magic world, the economy somehow turned around, COVID disappeared, and we secured our southern border, would anybody care whether they heard from President Biden or not?
Of course not. And that's the point. What are three things that people really care about? They want the dollar bills in their wallet to retain their value. That is not to be eroded by inflation. Problems there. They want their children to be safe, to be in school, and to be learning, to have a bright future. All across the country, in varying degrees, the schools are failing the children. Third, you want to be able to leave your house and walk around your neighborhood and feel safe. There are no neighborhoods in the United States now that feel as safe as they did 5 years ago. Now, I'm not blaming Mr. Biden for any of these things. To some degree, he's responsible, but there's plenty of blame to go around. But to say that with inflation raging, crime spiking, and children out of school are glued to their screens all day long, and to say that, well, the problem is Biden isn't conspicuous enough in our lives, that seems to me fanciful.
The one place that the president is the most conspicuous, or conceivably the most important of his job titles, is commander-in-chief. We've got this big U.S.-Russia meeting going on in Geneva right now, where the U.S. is begging, threatening, cajoling, whatever adjective you want to pick, the Russians to not invade Ukraine. What is the connection between President Biden's weakness domestically, politically, and the U.S.'s negotiating ability and arm-twisting ability overseas?
Well, Vladimir Putin is a master at reading the American domestic conditions and how that affects a president. Mr. Biden is weak politically. That is hardly a state secret. Furthermore, the last time he acted with great consequence in foreign affairs was with the chaotic, disgraceful, deadly withdrawal from Afghanistan, at which point it seems to me Putin says this person may not quite be up to this. There's an analogy here. In the spring of 1961, very early in John F. Kennedy's presidency, he allowed the Bay of Pigs invasion to go ahead. He didn't give it particular support. It was a shambles all around. He then went off to meet with the Soviet leader at that time, Nikita Khrushchev. Nikita Khrushchev met with him in Vienna and treated him like a child, as someone not worthy to be on the world stage. I'm afraid Mr. Biden is having that same experience today with Mr. Putin saying, I'm not sure this man is as tough as this business requires.
Before we get to baseball, I just want to quickly get to this. Does President Biden, if you look back in history, have a unique opportunity here? George W. Bush, in a very unpopular moment, doubled down on what he was most unpopular of, which was the Iraq War. Kennedy turned things around with the Cuban Missile Crisis when he doubled down and fixed the Russian issue. Does President Biden have an opportunity to double down and fix COVID?
I don't think so, because as the president said the other day, it's not a problem that is amenable to federal solutions, but the COVID has a mind of its own. The virus gets a vote here. And in fact, the American people, I think, are ahead of their leaders in saying, you know, we're going to have to learn to live with this.
Yeah.
This is going to become an endemic, a part of our life, but we're not going to allow it to dominate our lives, close our schools, shut our restaurants, and confine us to our homes. The country has moved on faster and I think more wisely than their leaders.
Yeah, you and I talked about that a couple of months ago, and you actually predicted that was going to happen. One more prediction for you. This in your other area of expertise and your greater passion, which is baseball. The Yankees have named a female minor league manager, Rachel Bachelvac. Prediction, how long until we see a female manager at a major league game?
That'll be a little while, but let's say this for the females. Some people say, well, she never played the game. She was never out between the lines. That's true. But in fact, some of the greatest managers in baseball were pretty bad baseball players. They developed their managerial skills and their understanding of the game to compensate for their lack of accomplishments on the field. Tony La Russa, Tommy Lasorda, Earl Weaver of the Orioles. None of these were great players, but they were exemplary, and in Tony's case, still are very good managers.
Well,
so never say never with regard to this.
I wonder if you'd add in Billy Beane of the Oakland A's to that from Moneyball.
Sure, Billy Beane was a promising player. The promise turned out not to be fulfilled, so he went into the front office and revolutionized baseball.
Yeah.
I think that when you show a major league team that a woman manager can win games, they'll hire her.
They'll hire her, and the fans will love it. George Will, welcome to the News Nation family. We're glad to have you, sir, and we'll see you soon.
Glad to be with you. Hope to see you soon.
You will. The battle for Texas governor begins at the border of all places. Candidates are pitching their plans to solve the problem, so who gets the upper hand? We're 8 months away from the midterm elections, but the leading candidates for Texas governor have already figured out the key issue, immigration. Both Greg Abbott, the current governor, and Beto O'Rourke, the challenger, went to border towns today to make their pitch. Take a listen.
Doing common sense things like expanding Medicaid, those aren't Democratic Party platform positions. They're not Republican Party positions. They're Texas values. So I don't know that I see my fellow Texans by party.
Knowing that the chaos and crisis at the border caused by the Biden administration's open border policies makes the border one of the most important issues facing the state of Texas at this time. We bring in James Hansen, director of the Texas Politics Project at UT
Austin, premier polling group in the state of Texas. Good to see you, sir. I want to bring up this poll that you all had out. Important issues to Texan: immigration, 38%. The next closest thing is 23%. Abbott says it's one of the most important things. It seems like it is the only thing about this election.
Well, Leland, for Republicans, there's a real argument to be made for that. If you dig down into those numbers that you're showing to your viewers, that 38% is actually almost doubled among Texas Republican voters. Close to 70% say that it's the most important problem facing the state. That's a really consistent result over about the last dozen years of polling. Nothing really lights up and unifies the Republican base like issues of immigration and border security.
It's interesting because a Democrat we had on last week was trying to tell me that Hispanics aren't really worried about border security and therefore Democrats are going to still always win the Latino vote. But you think about the counties of the Rio Grande Valley, which is the worst part of the border problem, the border counties to Mexico, Cameron, Starr, Willacy, and Hidalgo counties. Clinton carried those in 2016 by 39 points. Biden won them by only 15 points, and those are Latino majority counties. Are we to believe that that slide is continuing, and how much of that is Latinos who are upset about the border?
Well, I mean, it's a number of things. I mean, those numbers are really clear, and they've raised a lot of eyebrows and affected strategy in Texas. Two things are going on here. One is that Democrats in Texas have historically overestimated security of the Latino vote for them. Latinos have been more persuadable than Democrats have often presented publicly. If you go back to the 2018 gubernatorial election, Greg Abbott, if the exit polls are even approximately right, which they probably are if they're not exact, got about 44% of the Latino vote. And so in some ways, there's a certain rediscovery of something that's been going on for a long time in Texas.
You think about this. Who do you support right now? This is December 9th. Abbott, 58%, O'Rourke, 38%, 57-38. 30 seconds. If O'Rourke is going to win, it will be because X, you're not going to say the border.
You're not going to say the border because you're going to say because he can mobilize Democratic voters at an unprecedented level, and something happens that upsets the current setting right now. Right now, Greg Abbott is in a very secure position to win his primary and to win yet another term as governor. Something's got to happen to upset the current dynamic. And if it happens on the border, that's probably not in the Democrats' favor.
Fascinating. Well, O'Rourke got a lot closer to Ted Cruz than anybody thought he would, so we'll see if that happens again. Professor, it was our first conversation, but it will not be our last. Great analysis. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Leland. Enjoy the visit.
Thank you, sir. Going overseas now, the Winter Olympic Games start in Beijing just about 3 weeks from now. And there is one American athlete finally willing to talk about the elephant in the room, China's human rights abuses. Timothy Leduc, a U.S. pairs figure skater, said, quote, "What I can say is we absolutely acknowledge the horrifying things that we've seen happening to the Uyghurs. I read somewhere the other day that it's the largest number of people held in internment and labor camps since World War II. I mean, these things are horrifying. Human rights abuses are what we are seeing happening." The stakes couldn't be higher for China's Communist Party, who view the Games as an opportunity to increase their global power and influence. We're joined now by Robert Wilkie, former Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, former Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness under James Mattis. Good to see you, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Lee.
As you look at this from the Chinese perspective, how many more of these athletes can they afford to have start talking about this before NBC is forced to talk about it on their Olympics broadcast?
Well, don't count on NBC moving in a pro-freedom direction anytime soon. What's going to happen is what happened in the 1968 Olympics, when African-American athletes protested on the medal platform. John Carlos and I forget the other sprinter. Those are the kinds of things that will have to be made visible. And you will see then the Communist Party move into action. If that did happen, I could expect feeds being cut. I mean, look at their behavior in the last Olympics. Because they lost to the United States, they put out to the world that they really didn't lose, but we're going to include medal counts from Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, places that are not even part of the People's Republic of China in terms of competition in the Olympics. This is part of a move by the Communist Party to transmogrify Xi Jinping into a transcendental historic figure, a historical figure. They're going to do everything they can to whitewash any protests, and we shall see what
it feels like. And I hate to be cynical, but it really feels like they're also sort of paying for the other side of this. This was from the Wall Street Journal today. Eileen Gu, I guess is how you say her name. She is an American, lived here, trained here, is a snow skier of some type. And she has decided to compete for China in the upcoming 2020 Winter Olympics. This was an incredibly tough decision for me to make. I'm proud of my heritage and equally proud of my American upbringings. The opportunity to help inspire millions of young people where my mom was born, evidently her mother was in China, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Her sponsors include Red Bull, Victoria's Secret, Beats by Dre, Bank of China, Anta Sports Products, Therabody, Tiffany & Co. We go on. You got to imagine that the Chinese Communist Party just absolutely loves an American who says, I'm an America in America and a Chinese in China.
Absolutely. But more importantly, they love American sports institutions. You've covered for many months the NBA's cozy relationship with China. They've tried to suppress dissent within the NBA, particularly of Mr. Cantor, who plays for the Boston Celtics.
Yep.
In his move to highlight the millions and millions of people who are being oppressed and imprisoned in Xi's concentration camps, and the NBA has tried to silence him.
Yeah, well,
this is an old Leninist trick. Give us the rope, and we're going to hang the capitalists. And we're doing everything that we can to give the Chinese the impetus to do that.
Well, we will be watching to see if there's any athletes to take the brave stands that you alluded to. Always good to see you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland.
Yeah, appreciate it. NASA looks for new answers to the world's oldest questions. We'll give you a preview of what they might find when we come back. We can now see deeper and farther into space than ever before and look at the first stars and galaxies that were formed more than 13 billion years ago. If you're wondering why are we doing this story, just give me a minute here. America is still the only country to put people on the moon. The only one with a space shuttle, the first with private space flight, but lately we've fallen behind. Maybe this changes that. James Webb Space Telescope is essentially a $10 billion observatory in space, which just might help America regain its edge in space. Joining us now, a man who is quite excited by this, Paul Brine, who is a professor of Earth and Planetary Sciences at Washington University in St. Louis. All right, the staff's been making fun of me all day for this. So if some guy was reading a newspaper on Pluto, could we read it with this telescope?
It's not quite that powerful, but I can tell you this. If we wanted to know whether someone could possibly have been reading a newspaper in a very distant galaxy, then you can't do any better than the James Webb Space Telescope.
Okay, so in other words, if there's somebody out there reading a newspaper on some other galaxy, this thing is going to find it.
This thing is at least going to help us understand whether that's likely. And that's because the James Webb Space Telescope is going to be able to see farther back than any other telescope we've ever had, almost back to the beginning of the universe, the beginning of known time. We reckon that it's going to be able to see back to those galaxies and stars that formed within the first 100 million years of the history of the universe, when the very first stars ignited and formed the very first galaxies. We haven't had the ability before to go see that far back. To do that, we need a giant telescope. We need to be in space. And that's recently what NASA, with the European Space Agency and the Canadian Space Agency, has managed to accomplish by successfully deploying the spacecraft.
I understand why you're good at teaching this, because you get so excited about it. It's infectious. How is it that we can build this thing that can look into galaxies 100 million years back, yet America can't build a hypersonic missile and the Chinese can?
Okay, so a lot of it has to do with, I think, political will to decide this thing. This telescope was extremely expensive. It encountered numerous issues along its history of development, and yet it was a set of people really advocating for this thing to be developed. You had politicians supporting it. You had a lot of scientists supporting it, lending their weight. I mean, the development of this instrument took about 20 years. There was an op-ed written in 1984 describing what it could do. So we had people pushing for this for a very, very long time and saying every time they hit a stumbling block, no, keep going. Yes, we know it's hard to do. It's difficult to develop this technology. It's even more difficult to build it in a way that we know it will work when it's out in space. So I think it's more than anything, it speaks to the tenacity of the national and the international astronomical community really pushing for this thing to be built.
Well, I'll tell you this, if it finds something out there, if it finds some guy reading a newspaper, we're having you back on to talk about it, all right?
Be my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Professor. It was good to see you.
Thank you.
The tragic Bronx fire brought out the best in America. We can talk about the firefighters who put saving people's lives first. The worst of times brings out the best in Americans. I've seen it countless times in hurricanes, floods, wars, and riots. Sunday morning in New York was certainly the worst of times. 17 died, including 8 kids, when a space heater shorted out on the second floor of a Bronx high-rise. Flames and toxic smoke engulfed the whole building. There were no sprinklers, and false alarms over the years had lulled the residents to complacency. Truth is, hundreds live in the building. The lucky were trapped in their apartments. Many who tried to escape succumbed to the smoke in the hallways. 200 firefighters arrived on the scene. Many ran out of oxygen as they fought the fire, but pushed on through the smoke and the flames and the danger. It goes without saying, but it's an important reminder. There was no guarantee those firefighters would come out alive, but they ran into the flames. The pictures afterwards say it all. New York's bravest, covered in soot, carrying toddlers out who are lucky to be alive. Something else struck us. Most of the firefighters in these pictures that we see are white. In fact, almost exclusively so. The building's residents were almost exclusively black. We have no idea from the pictures who's vaccinated against COVID or not, who sports a MAGA hat or a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on the weekend. The firefighters certainly didn't care about who was in the building. They cared that there were people in that building who needed help. And I can guarantee you, those being rescued never wondered for a second about the politics or vaccination status or race of the hand who found them in the smoke and then carried them or their children to safety through the danger. For all the division manufactured lately by the media over race, politics, and the vaccine, in the worst of times, it doesn't matter. There isn't time to care about somebody's skin color, their politics, or their vaccination status. Maybe, just maybe, what we care about during the worst of times is what we should care about all the time. I'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.